Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tim McLean. I'm the Director of Marketing here at thinQ. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar. You're here to learn how not to be one of the thousands of VoIP providers who loses money each year to fraud. Unprotected VoIP PBX and cloud communications as a service platforms are sensitive to these kinds of attacks and fraud, resulting in service downtime, call quality issues, and direct financial loss. In particular, toll fraud, where fraudsters artificially generate a high volume of international calls on expensive routes. Fraudsters make calls to what are known as premium rate numbers and then take a cut of the revenue generated from those calls. But Bicom Systems and thinQ are here to help. You'll see how Bicom sipPROT prevents common attacks by monitoring SIP traffic and updating your firewall to block attacks. Plus, you're going to learn how thinQ's least cost routing, origination, and termination services have been architected to prevent fraud, deliver maximum uptime, and save VoIP providers 40 to 70% on their calls. And best of all, everyone is going to receive a tip sheet after our time together that explains how to address the top fraud and security concerns. Plus, you'll be invited to learn more about Bicom and thinQ's solutions. But before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. First, we are recording this session, so everyone who's registered will receive a link to the recording tomorrow. So if you're called away, no worries, we've got you covered. Next up, we really want your questions. Please use the chat button in the Zoom interface and send your questions to questions here. That's me. I'm going to be collecting your questions and we'll get them answered at the very end of our time together. So let's introduce our speakers. First up will be Eric Johnson, New Business Development at Bicom Systems. And then we'll hear from Eric Leon, the VP of Sales here at thinQ. So Bicom, take it away.
As Tim said, at the end of this webinar, we have a one-sheet handout. It's 4 steps to protecting your VoIP. And also on Tuesday, April 2nd, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to do a live demonstration of our SIP security product that we're highlighting today. So in 2017, Cyber Threat Defense Report came out, and you're not going to believe it. They determined that we are under attack. We're under attack in every way, shape, and form at this point. This is not a trending issue. It's skyrocketing through the roof. You can see here, just in the healthcare industry, it's a 60% increase. In the power and utility companies, it's a 527% increase in attacks just over 1 year. So this is obviously a major issue. What are they doing? There's a couple ways they're coming at us. One is denial of service, which is always a big one. It's easy to get in to a network or a particular device and slow the system down, bog it down, gaining control of your system. The other one that's a little bit newer is this eavesdropping. Basically, hackers are able, with the computer system, listening in on the calls and then pulling out critical information, anything from cell phone numbers to bank accounts, credit cards, health information, things like that. Let's go to the other screen here. They're also doing spamming. We're all familiar with spamming with our email systems. It's always a pain to have to filter them out. It's even worse when it's coming over your phone system. And then, of course, the big one is theft of service. This is money. This is they're using your system to make phone calls, and then you're getting the bill and you have to pay it. Okay, so what happened a few months ago, somebody in an ISP association fell under attack. So this is a real life scenario that spurred us to circle back around and make sure we're all dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and that we know everything that's available to protect our customers, our phone system, protect our business. Go ahead, Tim, next screen. So it was a mid-sized company in Florida. They had their phone system breached what happened was the intruders leveraged a call forwarding feature, which came back to the service provider's soft switch, and then they began to terminate thousands of calls. It's a premium rate deal over the weekend in Africa. So the service provider went on the listserv after it was all said and done, was looking for some insurance, errors and admissions insurance. The cost for them was $5,000 to cover this. So he was looking for insurance. So this is where we thought we need to circle back around and make sure we're doing everything possible to educate everyone on what is available for their soft switch. Next screen, Tim. So how do I prevent an attack? There's many ways to prevent an attack. The one thing you don't want to do is try to ignore this, because once they get into you, you're done. So we want to do everything we can to prevent an attack. With Bicom Systems, we have a soft switch, and then laying over the top of our soft switch, we have a SIP protection piece of software. It's called sipPROT. It's extremely effective in the telephone industry, provides real-time protection for SIP attacks. Next screen. Okay, so what does it do? It's different than a lot of the competition out there, where it's monitoring live traffic. It's not waiting for something to happen and then reporting on it. It's monitoring live traffic. It's blocking and unblocking IP addresses. It's using pattern recognition, basically brute force or SIP protocol anomaly detections. The system is out in front. Before your customer knows there's a problem, you know there's a problem, and you can begin to react. Next screen. So sipPROT's a great product. It was one of the first ones in the industry. It's been out in the field for a long time. It's deployed worldwide. We have over 400 deployments. Really, it's been smooth sailing in a lot of countries. We're talking in the Middle East, in Europe, in Africa, South America. Of course, here in the United States, it's saving service providers millions of dollars, and of course, those countless hours of sleep not lost to the administrators when they're using the sipPROT product. So what does it do? It climbs in between that firewall and your network. It protects what is our PBX, that's our soft switch. It protects the voice and provisioning services with the network layer SIP security software module. Next screen. So not to get too technical, but the immediate benefits of it is it's a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week monitoring service. It's a rapid response. It's going to detect the attackers. It's going to block them again before your customers know what's happening. It's going to save you time because you can focus on solving the problem rather than head scratching as to what's going on out there, locating the issues and then trying to determine what to do next. With sipPROT, you know what's going on immediately and you can react. Next one. There we go. So in the midterm benefits, this just makes sense. Better customer service. Of course, the service provider in this association, he's upset because his customers obviously lost money. They've all lost money. He's not providing the best customer service possible. He knows this. So he's losing in a couple ways. One, he had to pay out. There was a financial loss for him. Two, there's a possibility he could lose that account. And so, of course, there's a financial loss just to the bottom line of his business. And then the third one, when we look at increasing revenue, you want that that reputation where the system is up and running, it is secure, it's protected, it's being monitored and managed professionally. That's going to increase revenue because your customers are going to tell others about it. Next screen. So we're going to give you a live demonstration of the product. It's on Tuesday, April 2nd. It's 1 o'clock Eastern time. Just send an email into Patrice at bicomsystems.com, and he'll send you out an invite, as well as the one-page 4 steps to protect your VoIP, which is really the dotting the I's, crossing the T's. Everything's available for you. Oftentimes when we set up a VoIP platform, we forget about these things. Time to circle back and make sure we're all buttoned down. So next screen, a little bit about Bicom. We're a worldwide company. We're in we have offices in Europe, in Canada, United States, and South America. Yep. It's our mission. We unify communications. So we're an advanced software company. We have soft phones, call centers, deployed in the cloud, if you prefer. It's a complete turnkey system. Next screen. And so to get to know us better, our products, bicomsystems.com/products. We also have many case studies out there, keeping up with the blog posts and our newest releases. Next screen. So here it is. Provide us your email as part of the training and webinar. We can keep you right in line with everything going on VoIP at bicomsystems.com, or you can contact an account manager, sales@bicomsystems.com. And I think, is that it? Yeah. And so we all thank you, and we thank thinQ. We thank Eric and Tim. We've been big fans of thinQ for a long time, and so let me turn it over to them. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Eric. Let's get on to our next Eric Leon, the VP of Sales here at thinQ. Take it away.
Okay, great. Hey, everybody. So I'm Eric at thinQ. I'm going to be talking a little bit in continuation of what Eric was just discussing. I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into exactly what fraud is, what it looks like, and then ways that we might be able to troubleshoot that. So let's sort of give you just a general understanding of who we are as a company so that you can understand why we might be an authority in this space in regards to fraud. So the company's called thinQ. If you want to know just a quick background, we started in 2009. We focus all of our efforts on building cloud voice and messaging services. So we are a natural pairing with a solution, UC solution like Bicom, in which you can now gain access to all of thinQ's 45 plus domestic and international providers. So we become the conduit for the UC platform in order to get those calls completed both inbound and outbound. So what I'm going to be discussing here today is going to be, what is toll fraud? So let's just take another deep dive into what toll fraud is. We're going to be looking at why it even exists in the first place. What we're going to understand is, what is the typical pattern of toll fraud, right? Let's understand our enemy in this case. You know, a big point of frustration is that people often find that they get no cooperation from their vendors when it comes time to pay up for the toll fraud. So I want to take a look at that, and maybe we can understand why there's so much contention around that subject. And then, of course, I won't leave you without solution. So what I want to talk about is, does thinQ or any other carrier in the industry offer any potential solution towards toll fraud from the carrier level, right? And then, of course, we're going to wrap it all up with a Q&A session for both Eric and myself. So feel free to sort of shoot those questions in. I see some have already come in into the questions here on the panelist section. Okay, so let's dig in. What is toll fraud? Let's just make it simple, because there's a couple different ways to refer to this. But it's when a third party infiltrates your system. That could be at the device level. It could be in the UC cloud. It could be at your PBX, whatever it might be. And then they begin to make calls or receive calls without your permission. Currently, it's estimated over $7 billion annually, right? And we might think to ourselves, we're probably getting a handle on it by now, but the truth is, if we look at the past 5 years, it's increased by 5 to 6-fold, right? So these are all estimates. We don't know the full details, and one of the reasons behind that is because it's not often reported. So why does it even exist in the first place, right? What's the motivation behind it for these fraudsters? Well, they're usually internationally based in a country that makes it extremely hard to prosecute, right? So they have very little risk of being accountable for it. And it offers them an extremely high profit margin. So here's sort of a crude example of what a hacker does and how they actually get paid on this. You might be wondering, they're just making a bunch of calls. What are they doing? Reselling it? What does it look like and so forth? So once the hackers infiltrated your system and they begin to traffic pump to a predetermined destination, they have worked it out with that local provider, right, in order to get a kickback on that revenue that they send to them. So if they're going to do that, if they're going to start traffic pumping to a specific destination, what I want to understand is, what is that pattern going to look like? They focus on the window of opportunity. Oftentimes, you've been infiltrated days, if not weeks, before the actual event occurs. And what they're generally waiting for is an after-hours time period, a time period when people typically don't make calls. So they create a programmatic process in order to send massive amounts of calls, and Eric illustrated that in his presentation, where a typical user might only have 5, 10, or maybe even 100 live calls during the daytime. The fraudster can be sending thousands of live calls between the hours of 6 p.m. and 4 a.m. when nobody notices. I think it goes without saying that they're going to be doing this on weekends as well. Anytime they believe that you won't be able to spot what's happening, or your carrier won't be able to spot what's happening, they're going to focus their efforts on those time periods to maximize their returns. I also like to look at sort of what geo data is associated with that. So we do billions of minutes across the thinQ network. We have thousands of customers who utilize our platform. We have, of course, seen certain aspects of fraud come across our platform before. What we'll typically see is that they focus it on what's called the Caribbean islands or international destinations. So not everybody realizes that the Caribbean islands are actually part of the North American number plan, an ANP, right? And that all it takes is a 1 before the number to dial the Caribbean. So they think, oh, it can't be that expensive, and or it's not very at risk. Unfortunately, it's one of the highest areas in which fraudulent traffic is concentrated. International destinations, I've listed just a few that we've seen on our platform, but the list goes on and on and on. Ideally, what they're looking for is they're looking for somebody who's willing to accept a ton of traffic at a very high price point, right? So it's usually they're calling destinations that are many multiples of your average rate in order to maximize their return with minimal amount of effort. So why are you on the hook? Let's look at it from that perspective. Why is it that it's between 6 p.m. and 4 a.m., you send thousands and thousands of calls, you rack up a bill that's equal to your entire year's worth of usage? Why is it that your carrier is so insensitive and makes you, pay up on that bill anyway? Well, I don't think anybody's going to lose sleep over whether or not a carrier is going to make their money in the end of the day, but let's just take a look at it really quick to make sure we understand the motivation behind it. When carriers interconnect to other carriers, in the United States, there are 10,000 facilities-based telecommunications companies. That means your call is traversing dozens of providers on every call. So whenever a carrier signs an agreement with another carrier in order to get that traffic completed, that agreement usually comes with a clause in it. And that clause is, I don't care what type of traffic it is that comes across it, it's a consumption model. So if you use a minute, you pay for a minute. They also argue it's very difficult to prove it's fraud. So we look at it, not without sensitivity. If somebody were to have fraud across our platform and we were dealing with that customer, we would completely believe them and understand them because we have a relationship with them. I might even be able to convince the carrier network that it went over, but I won't be able to convince the next set of carriers in line with that call. And at the end of the day, the localized company who is in on the fraud is going to collect a check no matter what everybody does. So it really leaves us with no recourse to fight against that. So now that we have an understanding of what toll fraud is, I want to take a look at what thinQ offers. There's a few tools here that can help us further mitigate our fraud risk. But if I'm going to have an honest conversation, I'm not going to tell you that thinQ is the ultimate solution for fraud. The way I like to look at that is your first line of defense is always going to be in your physical and network security that you control. This happens before you ever even get to the carrier. And Eric so eloquently, advertised their product line, exactly what it's doing, and their focus, which I can say 99% of the companies out there don't even put anything in place for those types of things. And that is going to be your best line of defense. But we don't want to leave you without tools. Things can happen. You might be a month away from using Bicom and you're still using your current provider. Okay, so what are we going to do in these cases? So what I want to talk about is carrier level fraud mitigation, right? What kind of tools can you use in the Think cloud in order to protect yourself? And the categories we're going to look at is, first, how are you authenticating your traffic, right? That's your permission to send traffic across your carrier. Do you have capabilities of things like geo blocking? Do you have capabilities of things like rate blocking? Do you have capabilities of notifications when you hit certain things? And do you have hard limits that prevent you from having a catastrophic usage? So let's start with the authentication tab. And I'll try to keep this very concise here for the next few minutes, which is username and password versus IP. So I've got a very crude graphic below here, but I think it'll easily illustrate the risk associated with using username password authentication with your provider, right? In the case below, we have the user network on the left-hand side and we have the carrier on the right-hand side. And everything seems well. It's a two-way communication process back and forth with the carrier, sending and receiving call data, and that is using username and password as the authentication method. Well, there are a variety of different means that a provider can use to sniff out your username and password information. I won't go too into detail on that because it's not that type of webinar today. But regardless, they're very sophisticated at finding out that information. Once they gain access to your username and password authentication with your carrier, they're free to use their own server and send multiple calls over the platform, if not thousands of calls over the platform. You're never even the wiser, right? So if we look at an IP authentication method, this is honestly probably one of the most basic ways to protect yourself. When you have IP authentication, you now have a two-way communication with your carrier that is based on a physical IP address. Now, some of you might be saying to yourselves, well, you can fake an IP address. You can absolutely fake an IP address. But what you can't do is fake both pathways. You can fake an IP address to a carrier, but when that carrier says, great, I'm about to set your call up, they communicate back to the actual real IP address, and that real IP address would say, I didn't set anything up with you, and the call will never establish. So using IP authentication puts a physical location in it. So if your hacker happens to be in a foreign country on a server, and they're trying to authorize it from an alternative IP, they will be unable to provision traffic across that carrier. Cloud geo blocking. So I'm not going to dig too deep into what thinQ does, but you're probably getting the hint that thinQ is a cloud-based tool that allows you to manage over every single major network globally, right? We give it all to you pre-packaged, and we give you the free management tools to cultivate those carriers and to manipulate those carriers. So one of the features that we have inside of there is cloud geo blocking. So you can break things into geographical segments and block based on that information. So for example, you could create a group inside of our platform that says, I want to remove all availability of calling the Caribbean, a known fraudulent destination. Now you might need to get some calls completed to the Caribbean, and so we have other methodologies for blocking that type of traffic or fraudulent traffic to that location. But this could be your first line of defense. If you don't happen to be calling the Caribbean or international, you can geo block it on our platform. And that's a real-time tool that you can block and unblock at any point in time. You can geo block based on country, right? So you could sit there and say, I just don't want to send any calls to Malaysia or to the United States or wherever it might be. You can begin to get more granular. You might have identified that there's a particular state that you don't want to call. I never send a call to Alaska. If somebody's sending a call to Alaska, it must be fraudulent. You can block based on the rate center. And for those of you who are not familiar with the rate center, you can pretty much think of it as the first 6 digits of the phone number, just a little bit more broad than that. You can block by the NPA, which is the area code. So one of the nice things about this, and I'll just bring up a quick case example, is it's not outright fraud, but somebody did want to prevent it. There's high cost for calling free conference call numbers. On our platform, it's still really, really inexpensive in comparison to competition, but there's some people who just don't want to be able to call those free conference calling numbers. So they were able to block the first 3 or 6 digits of those numbers in our platform, preventing that from ever being called. So these are quick and easy tools for you to make broad stroke decisions and lower your risk of fraud to different locations. So of course, as I'm listing here, you can block the MPA and the NXX. Which brings me to my next topic. In our cloud tools, we also give you the ability to do rate blocking, right? Again, if we're looking at the typical traffic pattern of these fraudsters, they're not sending calls to places that cost, you know, a quarter of a tenth of a penny. They're sending calls to destinations that cost a penny or 2 pennies or 6 pennies, right? In some cases, it could be as high as 32 cents per minute, right? So what our system allows you to do is create blanketed cap limits that will block based on a segment. So for example, I could say for all of my traffic to North America, I never want to complete a call over 1 cent. And you can do that because 98% of the US population is at a rate well below that. So if somebody happens to be calling some obscure territory, it's probably, you know, due to traffic pumping and fraudulent traffic. So you can dictate that rate per minute per segment. You can manipulate that price based on international traffic versus North American traffic versus Caribbean traffic. You can really get as granular as you want. The way I like to think of it is, in about 2 seconds, you can create easy and simple rules. If you want to get more granular than that, it'll take you twice the time, right? But no matter what your requirement is or what experience you've had in the past, you can create a customized solution around that. Now, we're not without notifying you of events that are occurring. So not only are you getting our 24/7 support team who's always looking at traffic for any sort of anomalies or variables, but we are allowing you to block, we are allowing you to create these sort of rate notifications based on certain segments across the platform. Okay, so cloud notifications and soft limits. Let me go into that really quick. Sorry to rehash a slide for you. So soft limit notifications. This is a customer-controlled daily spend notification. So you would say in our system, hey, on a typical day, I only spend $20. So I want to be notified when I get to $18. So what's so valuable about that? Well, if it's 9 o'clock in the morning and we send you a notification that you've already spent $18 for the day, you might understand that something is happening unexpectedly. And you can go into the portal and see in real time exactly what's going on with your traffic pattern. We also have hard limit notifications. Which is a little different than a soft limit. So if, again, in the same example of, I usually only spend about $20 a day. Well, you might find it necessary to create a hard limit at $22 a day. If I've spent $22 for the day, I want you to turn off my international, and then I will activate it again inside of the portal. This prevents you from racking up that $100,000 bill overnight, and you have serious cost mitigation in the process. You will also get notifications when you reach your daily maximum. One of the nice things about our notifications is it's going to tell you exactly what traffic pattern we're looking at that moment in time. So if you happen to be traffic pumping to Russia, you're going to get that hard limit notification. Hey, you spent $22. Seems like 98% of your calls are going to Russia, and you're averaging a rate of 18 cents per minute. So to wrap it all out here, now that we sort of understand the different tools that thinQ has and so forth, I want to give you guys, and of course we're going to open it up to questions, but I want to give you guys just an idea of how you can do a little bit of a deeper dive inside of either Bicom's platform or thinQ. So of course I've got the link up here, bicomsystems.com. Go onto their website, reach out to them, schedule a demo. We've of course got thinQ.com, thinQ.com. Reach out to us. We're happy to do a deep dive and a live demo, show you exactly how the platform performs, whether it's for fraud or how you can just improve your cost structure and quality around your voice traffic. So let me open it back up to Eric and Tim.
All right. Eric, thank you very much. I think we learned a lot about the potential sources of fraud and how to work through it. Obviously, Bicom has a frontline solution to handle a lot of it. And of course, thinQ has a lot of mitigation elements in our cloud software to help mitigate it as well. So it's good to know these tools exist. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses are running without it now, VoIP providers. So hoping these tips will go a long way in helping some folks take advantage of what's available to them. We did have a couple questions come in. And I'm going to start with, and Laura asked this question, it's a great question, and I'll throw it over to Eric at Bicom to answer, is Who is liable in the case of fraud, the end user or the provider?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, with two Erics, I got confused. Yeah, so, and that's why I sort of spent a bit of time on that section, because it's always a bit of a sore subject. What you're going to find with any provider is, the truth is, they're going to put it in the paperwork for when you sign up with the platform, that the customer is always responsible for that fraudulent traffic. That's why we spend time doing these webinars and our onboarding process with our customers, educating them as to what the potential risks are and how to get ahead of those risks. I think oftentimes people feel that the carrier feels like they're cashing in on fraud. And I can tell you from my perspective, it's always a lose-lose scenario. If somebody were to rack up a large business, it could impact their business, it could hurt their future potential for growth. And that's counterintuitive. I mean, that's counter to what our goal is, and that is to help our customers grow.
Right. Eric, do we still have you on the line over there at Bicom?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Good. Just wanted to make sure you were still there. So just a question, and again, Eric over at Bicom, this one's for you too. Like, who should we report it to if we've had fraud? How does that work?
I mean, Eric would know better than I would, but you'd report it to the FCC.
Okay.
And if you're an end user, of course, you want to report it to your service provider immediately, to curtail the damage. And then, of course, that service provider needs to have certain protocols in place, i.e., let's contact the carrier and start shutting stuff down, things like that. But overall, you should report it to the FCC. There's even a chance you can report it to the FBI. I think Eric said earlier that a lot of it goes unreported. At this point,
That's
it's
right.
unacceptable. We need to be reporting this. Eric, go ahead.
No, Eric, you nailed it on all fronts. Yeah. The idea here is, and I'll be honest with everybody here, it doesn't, when you report it to the FCC, not a lot is going to come from it. But if enough people report it, it warrants an investigation. And I can tell you right now, we've seen them come in for help from us in order to do an investigation. So I know that at points, there are different fraudulent activities that happen in which the government will investigate and do a deep dive into that. So I do encourage everybody to report that. You absolutely report it to your carrier as well. So we route billions of minutes, and when we see something flagged on a particular account, we use that as a fingerprint to look if it's affecting any other customer type on our platform. So again, I hope that every carrier is doing the responsible thing and flagging that. If they are, then it's definitely important for you to reach out to your provider.
Great. And I've got one here too, Eric here at thinQ. This one's for you. This is from Pratik. He asks, if you're having fraud to a particular location, how would you handle this?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're having fraud to a particular location, if you're on thinQ, then what I would encourage you to do is to reach out to our support staff so we can come up with a game plan for you. But you would actually go into your thinQ portal if you were a little bit more hands-on, and you would look up that call. So you would look up the call in question, and then you would block it either based on country or based on the area code dialed. So the rule of thumb is, if it's in the US lower 48 states, you block based on the MPA and XX, so the first 6 digits of a phone number. If it's international, you block based on either the country if you can, or get a little bit more granular into the location there. If it's the Caribbean and you're not using Caribbean otherwise, we recommend turning the Caribbean off.
Well, I want to say we just went only 5 minutes over. We did well in our time, and I think we all learned quite a bit here. So I'm excited to wrap this up, and we'll get the recording out to all the registered attendees, and you should be seeing that either later today or early tomorrow. In it, you're going to find our tip sheet for, as a result of this webinar, to all the hands-on tips that both Eric's provided for how to lock down your VoIP service provider business to prevent fraud, and all the hands-on tips that you need. And there'll also be notes in there about how to sign up for the demo next week of Bicom, and also how to get a demo of thinQ to learn how to unlock more than 45 carriers and bring all the fraud mitigation technology we have at the carrier level to your VoIP service provider business.